Hi, welcome back to Cambridge Inside Out, and I'm Judy Nathans, right?
You almost forgot there for a second.
And
I'm Robert Winters.
Yeah.
Still Robert Winters. So we were talking about
infrastructure type stuff.
some infrastructure on February 11th City Council meeting.
About
right?
what we never.
Yeah.
So
it was interesting, and I'm just grateful. I felt when you find out when you learn things like how many fire hydrants are in the city, how many miles.
Look at that, 1,800. Didn't know that.
Yeah. To me, this is gold. This is
we
wonderful
take things
stuff.
for granted, like water and energy and electricity, and it all comes from somewhere. And we live in a very dense place. So I appreciate the water department. I appreciate the fire department. I appreciate the city. I appreciate all of them.
I've been this way for actually now, my goodness, like 30 years. I served on this water and sewer advisory committee, got to know people in the water department. I was appointed by Mayor Al Vellucci.
Wow, before they redid the water.
It was in about 1986 or 1987. Wow. And and I got hooked, honestly, on environment and infrastructure. My involvement with recycling happened actually a few years later.
Well, then you also knew John Nardone, and it was Owen that were working in the sewer division at that point.
Yes, yeah. So we like talking about sewers and stuff.
Yeah, and they're still there. Longevity is very important, and institutional memory and all that stuff.
Absolutely. So anyway, my advice to if you want to be a real Cambridge citizen is learn about the infrastructure.
Learn about where does the recycling go? Where does the whatever
when the storm drain down the corner goes? Where does the water? How does it make its way to Deer Island? If it makes it to Deer Island, or does it go into the Charles?
Go on a Deer Island trip.
Or does your water go into the Mystic River watershed? We did a thing back when I think it was shortly after we were really in the thick of recycling. Doug Foy came by, and he later became a commissioner within one of the governor's administrations. But he was then, I think, with Conservation Law Foundation, maybe.
Yeah.
Anyway, we were doing these storm drain stenciling projects of to where people are going to go and put these stencils down, say don't dump oil drains to Boston Harbor, right?
Oh, I've seen all those things.
Yeah. So now actually there are some that are actually embedded in brass,
something
permanently,
about
or steel. But the thing is, back then it was just stencils. And I pointed out at our very first meeting about it, I said, well, but if you're saying drains to Charles River, in fact, that's only true for parts of Cambridge. You go, oh, yeah, well, we shouldn't really be giving misinformation. Like, you don't want to be going up on North Cambridge and putting a stencil that says drains to Charles River when it doesn't. So I got the maps, the McGuire maps from Public Works. And I was the guy, when people were coming to be participants, it was an all-volunteer project to do these storm drain stenciling. They came to me, and I say, well, where are you going to be doing the stenciling? And I look it up on the map, say, okay, you want the ones that drains to Alewife Brook.
That is amazing. So wait, there's Alewife Brook, Charles, and any others?
The principal ones are Alewife Brook, which drains to the Mystic River watershed, and then there's the ones that go to the Charles River. They all join together in Boston Harbor, but in fact...
and there's two separate, one for like sink stuff, and then there's one for
the thing is, it really depends. So the thing is that much of this area had a lot of what they call combined sewers. So it was where you might, like, for example, my house, there's a drain that takes water like from the roof because it's a flat roof building.
Oh, right.
So that would take just non-sanitary sewage, just rainwater.
That's non-sanitary versus sanitary.
In an ideal world, that would go to a storm drain, which would go to a receiving water like the Charles River, whatever. Or because there's a lot of street runoff in storm drains on the street, that's actually filthier than septic, actually.
Yeah, I bet.
So you actually want that to go, you don't want that necessarily. Sometimes you do, but sometimes you definitely don't want that going straight to the rivers. So, but the thing is that, and then, septage, from homes and sanitary systems, then that should go into its own separate one. So separating storm drains from septage systems would be the ideal, but it's incredibly cost prohibitive. So there's like a 33 phase program to do it, which we'll never actually get to. But the thing is so there are still combined sewers. And I think in best practice, actually leaving some of them combined is not a bad idea, because some of the stormwater actually, when combined with septage, as long as it's all going through for treatment,
Right.
maybe that's actually okay in some places.
Right.
But when you got a lot of volume,
Yeah.
you know, like just stormwater, you don't want that going to Deer Island for treatment like it was septage. You want it just to go run off into the streams, you know?
I guess, yeah.
And yeah, are there some potential hazards with that? Yeah, sure. There's the problem of combined sewer overflows where, you know, the thing is,
Right.
rather than have sewers back
Yeah.
up into people's homes, what would happen is if it's a combined system, if it starts to surcharge, then the better solution is to allow it to go over a weir
Right.
and then discharge to the Charles River, even if it's full of pollutants, because otherwise everybody's
gonna back
basements
into-
are.
yeah, right.
So the city's been great getting ahead of the game and separating out systems to whatever degree is feasible. You know, and there's a lot of different aspects of this. There were some big proposals for these big 24-foot diameter underground storage tunnels that were going to take all the stormwater.
Proposals from where, the state or the MWRA?
It was going to be MWA, but it was also going to cost like, you know, $3.7 billion.
I mean, they've done a good job at trying to deal with the Charles River and overflow. I know
Yeah.
through the last.
Actually, I think it
years.
was like $1.2 billion or something, but then they ended up settling for a much better idea, which was fix the existing plumbing rather than replace it with something space age.
I am all about fixing things.
And there's, you know, municipalities, Cambridge has been
Yeah.
especially good.
Yeah.
You know, that's why I have to say, when Nancy Glover was
Yeah.
speaking at the council meeting
Yeah.
about Cambridge doing due diligence to stay
Right.
ahead of the game, she's 100% correct
Yeah.
on this.
Yeah.
Cambridge has been ahead in terms of replacing water
Yeah.
mains, replacing sewers, separating out septic.
We're lucky we have the money we devote to infrastructure
Right.
because of whatever, you know.
Yeah, you know, and it certainly doesn't hurt that Owen O'Riordan was
Yeah.
like city engineer, is now Commissioner of
He
Public
knew all
Works.
about those sewers.
He and the
right?
deputy commissioner, they know the
Yeah.
stuff inside out.
Yeah.
So this is great, and so we're ahead of the game, and we're doing. You know, are you going to just flick a switch and suddenly have everything be all separate and wonderful and pure and clean? No, of course not. But we're doing better than most, and I think that's great.
That's
so
good to know. So, so they'll
Right.
deal with that down the line, I guess, whether there's any compensation at all. If it is, it's not gonna come from any,
right.
I don't know.
Now there are at least two other things that I think were of significance
meeting? Oh,
at
yeah.
the February 11th meeting. So one is sort of the ongoing saga about tree ordinance
canopy,
and
the
tree
ordinance,
canopy and a proposed moratorium, whatever. There was also kind of an interesting little brouhaha that took place based on a letter from former Cambridge Tenants Union boss
Turk.
Mike Turk that turned into a kind of an interesting moment with Councillor Zondervan. So, I don't know, you want to do trees or? All right, I'll tell you
Well, we
what.
have time to do both, but I would concentrate more on the trees, because
right, let's
then
do-
it follows the
let's-
tree ordinance, which
all right.
I did watch that.
So let's
meeting.
talk trees here a little bit
Yeah.
first, okay? So, so I think when we last had a program here, we were talking a little bit about tree ordinance, and there was an upcoming meeting on February 14th having to do with basically doing some due process on a proposed moratorium, which had not been part of the original
Right, it had
meeting
to come
or
before the
meeting.
ordinance committee rather than be voted on that night, which some people wanted,
Yes.
but
yeah.
it was all about process, and it was not in the original, yeah.
Right. So it's sort of it's with us still.
Yes.
I believe a committee report is likely to come back at the next city council meeting, which will be
February
believe
25th.
right. So
No,
this,
no, 6th.
right. So it's this coming
No,
Monday.
25th, because you said the 24th is Sunday, right?
Well, it's, yeah,
Yes,
that's right.
it's
Okay.
the 25th.
All right, so anyway, that's coming, and so they had, and I imagine that the in this committee report there were certain possible, I think some amendments were suggested at this
Yes.
ordinance committee meeting to the original proposal. I mean, let me just say the short and sweet of this, which
Yes.
is that there's been a tree ordinance on the books for
Right.
25 or so years, right? I suspect it had to do with some controversial attempts to remove trees. Maybe it was even the Houghton beach, maybe on Mass Ave is what spurred this. I don't actually remember. I've got to find out. But
And it applied to individual property owners, or every?
I think it might have been broadly applied. But the thing is that I think the intention was to make sure that, you know, if you have like the if the Washington elm, which was this historic tree, was on private property, you wouldn't want somebody to say, I want that off my land, get rid of it. It wasn't on private property, by the way. It was right in the middle of Garden Street.
Okay.
But the thing is that if a tree is significant and beloved, and now in this day and age, people are concerned about its role it plays in providing part of the canopy and whatever.
And there's been a loss.
Right, and there's been some loss.
10%, 17%,
Yeah, it
20%?
depends on your denominator, as they say.
Yeah.
But the thing is, so there's been a law on the books that basically says, well, you're supposed to apply for permits for doing some of these things, and maybe if you want to take some out, there is actually already a provision for paying money to do a replacement or something.
So that was there. There was language about that.
Yeah,
okay.
I'm not going to be too specific about it.
And over certain commercial properties, they already had to submit a tree plan or something.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah. So some of this was already in place, but then they started meeting this task force on the tree canopy of the city. Urban Forest Master Plan
which
Task
has
Force.
been meeting.
Yeah. But people are saying like, by the time they come back with recommendations, the world will be ended and whatever. So some people propose a moratorium in addition to
1 year moratorium.
A modification of this. So, and it was a blanket moratorium. It was sort of like anything that's like at breast height, 8 inches or more, though I think that's been modified down to 6 now.
Oh, boy.
That unless it's dead, diseased, or dangerous, you can't touch it.
Yeah.
Right? Which is sort of a problem. So I think part of the, I respect the intent. I think everybody respects the intention here. But
it's got to be on an individual basis.
I know of one person, actually one elected official, who actually has trees on the property where there's an argument made from arborists. You need to thin them because for the health of all the trees, you need to take out a tree or two.
Or if you want to build something in your backyard, or like Alana brought this up a couple times, somebody's already applied for the permits, already has this ready to go, hired the contractor. Does this mean they can't do something for a year because of the tree? I mean, just some sensible stuff that she threw out. And
I couldn't make it to this hearing because I teach Thursday nights, but I wrote a letter with a picture of my tree.
Yeah.
In a letter to the city council, pretty much just saying, look, I don't know, my tree isn't dead. It may be dangerous, but I don't know that somebody's going to necessarily sign a paper and swear by that.
And if it falls down, it's probably going to cause damage.
Right, and it's an ash tree, which actually has some signs. I was looking at it the other day that there's classic signs that it could be already under attack by the emerald ash borer.
Evaluate it.
Yeah, like they said, well, if you've seen an increase in the amount of woodpecker activity, then that's a sign. I said, well, we have.
Okay. Well, you know what? I guess you better get that down.
Well, but the point is that
it's dangerous.
Even if it wasn't, but the point is, and it's also being used as a. Eversource, the electric company, is using it as a utility pole.
They should be paying you. I don't get that.
So I said, there are going to be situations where just a little flexibility should be woven into any ordinance, so that if you make a reasonable case as to why. You've got to move on this, then you should be permitted to do so without getting whacked with an
I think that's going to be
fine.
Built in, I think, as
I hope
amendments.
so. We'll
I think
see.
So.
Honestly, my respect for this city council is a little bit hinging on whether they act like adults.
But I have to say, I did watch it, and the public comments were interesting, and it wasn't all, we got to check trees at any cost. Some people did bring up that, first of all, and some councilors brought that up, is that not everybody... the individual property owner has one tree, is that really going to affect the tree canopy?
No.
And usually, and how many instances where they've actually taken one down? So it's almost like, why are we, causing all this?
So if you start, just basically making life difficult for
just the average person that, by the way, doesn't watch city council. I've met people that are very educated, very involved, and they don't know what's going on. And
it's it's kind of like an attribution error that happens. So an evil developer comes swooping in, buys a property, clear cuts the forest, whatever, and then they say we've got to do something about that. So they pass a law because they're angry about that, but then it affects the person who's
I
been
do
living
have
in
to
their home
say,
for
in
25
the
years.
defense of trees, I have to say though, it's the developers that are taking a lot, like in Cambridgeport or somewhere, and building 6 units on something that maybe had,
Yeah.
that then are taking trees down. So they kind of fall in between an individual property owner and a larger
Right.
building being. So there
Right.
is something to be said, and that a
Yeah.
lot of that's going on.
So again,
Yeah.
I have my general philosophical view about all of this is
Yeah.
that, you know, when you write laws, you have to first off, you have to create some waiver mechanisms. You have to understand that exceptions happen, and you know, and that there is, you know, so you know, you can't have like a blanket
Right.
law
And also,
that
I
says
mean, the
thou
whole thing
shalt
about
not do this.
income, I mean, I don't know how relevant that is to an older person. Are they gonna,
I
but
think
the
that-
point is, I think it's important because we're not talking little monies
Right.
here. We're
See,
talking
in the
thousands of dollars.
In the existing tree
Yeah.
ordinance, I believe there's a clause that was put in that says that this shall not apply to affordable housing projects. In other words, if the city wanted to go in, put in a
Right, but that's been argued about too.
Right, so
Jake
now people are
Williamson
saying,
brought up
well, wait a
some-
minute,
yeah.
this is an environmental justice
Right,
issue.
exactly.
Say, like, so you're saying that, you know, that.
It's not important to people that are,
right.
James Williamson, I mean, I think he
Right,
had a very
you
good
can just,
argument
you can
about
clear
that.
cut as
Yeah.
long as you're packing poor people into the lot, right, then that's
Yeah.
okay.
Or poor people don't need trees.
Yeah, and they
you
say,
know?
well, but housing is the priority here. I go, well,
It's
okay,
just- yeah,
maybe
I
it
mean,
is, but the
There's
thing,
a lot of things you gotta look at.
yeah. So anyway, I just hope that they can find an ounce or two of wisdom come this coming Monday.
Yeah.
We'll see. Now, another thing that was interesting and kind of, I think, a bit misreported, but there was a kind of an unexpected little turn that happened at this meeting where, so Michael Turk was, and Bill Noble and Connie Thibault were sort of like the mainstays of the Cambridge Tenants
Cavallini,
Union. Neil Rohr, Bill
Neil,
Cavallini,
yeah.
there was a,
The rent control days.
back in the days of rent control up until 1994-ish or so, there were, you know, people who were very major players in that whole thing. And on the other side was the Small Property Owners
Right.
Association people. Right, and Mike Turk was there every week. You know, honestly, I've been going up to council meeting. He was there every week then too. So you
Big
know, you get to know
mustache, right?
everybody. Big dark mustache, right?
I don't think
And
it's dark anymore, is it?
yeah,
Who
it
knows?
mainly is. Yeah.
We're all old.
So yeah, so anyway, Mike Turk wrote a letter basically fingering an organization that has the acronym NAIOP, but which is kind of a mismatch to the name. Basically it's an organization
National Association of what?
something, but it basically advocates for
Real estate.
commercial real estate primarily. All right, and then so he found some you know, I don't know, something on the web or whatever. That basically says they were taking credit for blocking all sorts of housing-related initiatives like tenants' right of first refusal, and this and that and the other thing, right? So the letter basically made it out as somehow that this organization was like at the heart of all things bad, you know.
Around housing and.
So
yeah.
so Councilor Zondervan chose to read
It was
Mike
a
Turk's
communication under communications.
Just under
and he wanted to
communications.
read the letter.
just read the whole thing, which is something I don't think I've ever seen anybody do before.
And the letter wasn't that long.
No, it wasn't that long. And then he kind of added
Went on
on to
to
it
his
his
own letter.
own statement.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know that he was explicitly fingering some of his colleagues by saying, you're in bed with the developers, or you're taking money, whatever.
He didn't say that.
I don't think he said it so explicitly, but the thing is that it was being, the suggestion was strong that there were people in the room who, you know, were somehow voting a particular way. Like, what was the big controversial one? It was
Tenants' right of first.
no, that was a year ago, but it was this housing bill that was coming from the governor.
Oh, that's recently about the
Relatively
real
recent.
estate tax would be used for.
Yeah, so,
I don't know.
but the thing is, it wanted to change the threshold for zoning from 2/3 vote to a simple majority vote, whatever.
Oh, right, for the surrounding
And then,
communities,
so
right?
they're saying
yes.
like, well, this is being promoted by the
By the-
industry,
right,
the real
so that they
estate
can build
industry,
more,
to build more and build
build
more and build more.
apartments.
So that's
Yeah.
basically what
that's
this
really what the
is
Turk
being
letter was
suggested,
basically
right?
about. Yeah.
So anyway, so then there seems to be, you know, whether it was just an interpretation, I don't know. I don't think it much matters, but
Yeah.
I was in the room and you could kind of see that there were some of the other colleagues on the city council getting pretty agitated.
Because it kept going on and on.
And he went on and on and
about
on
big
and
money
on
and big this
money
and big
and
interest. Yeah.
it really reminded me of when Lawrence Lessig got sort of brought in during it was a zoning.
He's a Harvard guy.
The ordinance committee meeting on the Mass and Main project several years ago, and then basically just when it launched into a rant against city council about the evils of money in politics. And I said, well, what relevance does this have to do with this? And the suggestion was being made that somehow everybody was sort of in the bag of the developers. And you know, and this is this trope that we keep hearing all the time.
Yeah.
You know, and honestly, I just don't see it. So was it starting to irritate some of the councilors? Yes. Did the mayor said, "Councilor, where are you going with this?" And Councilor Zondervan says, "I'm going to finish my statement regardless." So whether it was because of the suggestion of people being less than pure or whatever, at some point a little high sign went to each other, and enough councilors stepped out of the room.
So there was no quorum.
So there was no longer a quorum, and then the mayor said to Councilor Zondervan,
to the audience, the council has to be said. There's no quorum.
I seem to believe we have a lack of, so they have a recess. And people said, "My God, this is an outrage. People have walked out on it." Well, maybe they did. But the thing is that the suggestion that somehow this was some brand new thing, a terrible insult.
So were you there when it started again? I couldn't find it when I was trying to read the video. I could not get to the point where it started again.
Okay, so it doesn't happen often.
Yeah.
But it has happened at times when one counselor just goes on a rant.
Yep.
And won't curtail.
But he also was reading it. I mean, it's one thing if you're just
he's going to make a statement
it and
about,
doing it,
you know,
but he was reading this whole thing.
I am the pure one. Everybody else is beneath it. You know, so it
was too much.
So it was irritating, and so anyway, so one or two counselors did step out of the room. Recess was called, and then it turned into a story. Maybe it shouldn't have been turned into a story, but it was turned into a story.
I have not. So you've seen follow-up about it?
Well, there was a local blog.
I've been a little preoccupied, so I haven't really paid attention.
No, there was a local blog. It was Cambridge Day.
Cambridge Day, of course.
Yeah, which basically just looking for opportunity to sort of gang up on some counselors. So anyway, and then the recess lasted a few minutes, and they went in, and then things kind of calmed down a little bit.
Did he just stop? Because I didn't watch it.
The meeting was in recess. Now I can tell you because I've been around a while.
Yeah.
I remember one time when the meeting was recessed, and Marjorie Decker was talking, and she kept talking, and she was not going to shut up, and she went on. It was pretty spectacular, actually. I can also remember a time when public comment used to happen during the meetings when a certain R. Philip Dowds was at the microphone, and Mayor Reeves was mayor at the time, and he had no use for Phil Dowds.
Yeah.
And he basically sort of put the word out to. What happened that time is that the midnight came, and that was like an automatic.
Midnight.
Right. Meetings used to go long. And so Ken was like looking at the clock, going, "Oh, I'm going to really get you on this one." So the clock turned midnight, right in the middle of Phil's talking, and Councilor Reeves says the hour of the meeting's ended, the meeting is adjourned. Just cut him off mid-sentence.
Is that why public comment's in the beginning now?
It's not the only reason. I think it was just considered to be best practice.
Yeah.
But the single most spectacular incident I remember.
Okay.
Because I got drafted to help out.
When was this?
Was with Jonathan Myers when he was on the city council.
Oh my gosh,
and this was in the dying days of rent control. Question 9 had passed. And some counselors were lobbying at the State House to try and get some sort of emergency, temporary phase-out period instituted. And so people who had been diehard supporters of rent control for years were saying, well, we have to get the best possible compromise. But Councilor Myers was basically going to sort of say, I refuse to compromise. I am the glorious one.
Really? I didn't realize he was that far on the...
He wasn't. This was pure politics.
Sure.
And it was really irritating, Councilor Duhay, I think.
Who was on then? Yeah.
So it was really infuriating, the colleagues. So that was the most spectacular walkout because I actually got the signal to hold the door closed so he wouldn't see it happening. Mm-hmm. And then the counselors, one by one, got up, walked out, right? And I held the door so that he couldn't see it. And then the mayor just announced that the meeting, for lack of a quorum, And I
Who
I
was
don't
the
think.
mayor? Oh, Reeves. No, it wasn't Ken Reeves, was it? Duhigg?
No, I actually don't remember now, right? But the thing is so they just basically they shut him up, and he was really insultingly infuriating, and they shut him up. So what happened on the 11th was
Nothing near
nearly as
that,
bad
no,
as that.
no.
But you know,
But it has happened.
for
yeah.
those who think that this is not an available option, it is absolutely part of Robert's
Robert,
Rules of Order.
I think you're the only person in Cambridge that has been involved with the city council and its meeting everything since how long now? Since 1987?
You know, first about
That's
probably
amazing.
it's been a long time, yeah, and it's not 100% continuous.
No, but
you know,
it's amazing that
Yeah.
your history
I find
and
it
your knowledge
interesting.
of that
I do
stuff,
find
yeah.
it interesting. There's no question about it.
It's
yeah.
very valued.
Yeah. So
So we really, so I mean, basically, there's so it'd be interesting to see what happens on the city council meeting with the
Yeah.
tree ordinance.
Yeah. So the thing is that you know I mean the little walk I think there are political overtones. This is a municipal election year, and just like it's
yeah.
happened at the national level, you know, Bernie Sanders is now in there.
I cannot believe that.
So he's going to stick
And
in
Joe Biden, has he announced
Right,
it? You've
and
heard
Kamala
about that?
Harris, she
Well,
was
that-
asked, she says, I am definitely not a democratic socialist.
Oh, I heard that.
So
yeah,
they're all,
yeah.
everybody's staking out positions
It's
in the
too
political
much.
spectrum.
I just can't.
But it's
I wish
not
I could
just
wake up in
national.
2 years
Yeah.
and be settled somewhere.
So, you're right. But
Well,
but the thing
yeah.
is that it's you know it happens in a local level at a much more minor scale.
Yes,
People
but
are going to
it's
say,
still-
I'm the
yeah.
one who's fighting the developers.
Yeah.
I'm the one who's for affordable housing. I'm for this. I'm for that. Or you know.
Soapbox.
Yeah. So it's starting to happen, and we'll see how
By the way,
it starts to shape
you're
up.
the only one. Thank you for telling me what TNC stands for, because you know they
Transportation
kept
Network Company.
referring to it. No one said explain it to the audience. So thank
so
you.
people needed a word. They used to just say the taxi cab industry, but now Uber and Lyft
So
are not
basically,
taxi
that
cab
covers
companies.
Uber.
They're
I mean,
basically
Uber and Lyft.
yeah. So they say we're not actually in the transportation
Right.
business.
Liberal.
Well, we just make referrals and connect drivers to passengers.
Transportation Network Company.
Yeah, TNC. So
Jeez. All
anyway,
right.
we're just about
Yeah,
out of
there's a few
time.
seconds left, so we will be back next week.
And we'll be there. See you next week on
Bye.
Cambridge Inside Out.